Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I am from EzraAutomation.com and welcome to another video of our deploying microservices with Docker. And in this video, we'll be talking about how we can deploy a microservice or a application with Dockerfile. If you remember in our last video, we saw how we can run a application, which was an ASP.NET Core application using the Docker run command, using the Microsoft's image straight away and running the application inside the container. But in this video, we'll be talking how we can run or deploy an application. It can be any application, but in this video, we're talking about how we can run an NodeJS application inside the Docker using the Dockerfile. So if you have heard about the Dockerfile, Docker can build images automatically by reading the instruction from a Dockerfile. And a Dockerfile is a text document that contains all the commands a user could call on the command line to assemble an image. If you remember in our last video, we were discussing about a big command which actually help us create the application being deployed inside a container and run it, like volume mapping, port exposing and stuff. Those things we can do straight into this particular Docker file. And using the Docker build, user can create an automated build that executes several command line instructions in succession. That's the power of the Docker file itself. Well, as I said, I'm not really going to talk about a lot on the Docker file, but I'm going to show you what application that we are going to be deploying inside the Docker using the Docker file. This is the application, and we are going to be using a Docker file, something like this. So you can see that it is gonna have a Docker file on the right hand side, like from node::alpine, something like that. And there is a work directory or work dir of /app, and then copy command, and there is a run yarn install. There is a copy ... expose 3000, and again entry point yarn react. So what is these things that we are seeing over here? So once again, to dissect all these command, you can see that the first command, which is the from node::12.18-alpine, is nothing but a base image that you're going to be downloading from the Docker Hub, or it can be any container registry. And this is going to be basically downloading from the Docker Hub, by the way. And this application that we are going to see in this video is going to be a Node.js based application. So it requires a Node SDK, and that's exactly what it is going to be doing from this particular base image. And then we are setting a work directory inside the container. And that's what is this work dir /app mean. And we're going to copy all the files from the current directory, which is nothing but our local directory. If you remember in our last video, we discussed how we can do a volume mapping, that like -v of the ampersand pwd:/app. That's exactly what it is over here as well. That's what we are doing in this place as well. I copy all the files from the current directory to the working directory in the container. And you can see that this is what is the copy command doing. And then there is a run yarn install, which is nothing but we're going to install all the dependencies to run the application. And then we are again copying to copy all the files which is required to run the application inside the container. And then we're exposing the port 3000 here. So that is the port which is required for our application to run. And then we are setting an entry point. So this entry point is kind of new. You might not have heard. If you have, really, that's exactly what it is. If you're not, then entry point is basically telling your container like what it should look for while running the container, like the first thing that the container has to do, which is nothing but the yarn react. That's what it has to do. And once it does that, then it's going to run. So in order to run this particular Docker file from our command line, we need to do two things. The first thing is we need to build this Docker file using this docker build -t to do react dot. That is the first command that we need to use. And then we need to run the Docker image. So if you remember, the second command is pretty familiar because this is exactly what we discussed in our earlier video using docker run command. But this time we are going to run our image, which is nothing but the to-do react image that we have created using the first command. This is the docker build -t to-do react. That's what is going to be the image which we will be running as a container in this particular second command. So that's what I was talking about in our last video as well, that we are running an image as a container. And that's what is exactly happening over here. So once we run this particular container, we get our application up and running. But let's dissect the first command that we are seeing here, the docker build -t. So the first thing is we're doing a docker build, which has an -t, which is nothing but a tag of the image which you need to give, which is nothing but the to do React is the tag name. And the dot is nothing but the context, which is nothing but the current context of your application where you are building this particular app. Basically, it's going to have all the files required for your application to run. And the next command is very, very familiar to you, the docker run command. But the only additional parameter that we have is the -rm, which is nothing but remove once quit. Basically, like once you Control C to quit this particular container running, then it will also remove that container from the docker ps-a. So that's the only change over here. So let's quickly see everything in action and understand how things work. So for that, I'm going to flip to my Mac terminal this time. All right, so this is my Mac machine, which is running the Apple M1 chipset, and it is going to run the Docker. So you can see that there is a Docker running over here. So let's see how it actually going to work. So the first thing, as I told you, that I already have this particular app, and if I show you this ls, you can see that these are the files which is available on this application. And in order to run this particular app, all you're going to do is you need to do the yarn install. But I have already did the yarn install. That's why you can see there is this node_modules folder coming in. The next one is I need to do this yarn of the React, which is the command that you just saw on the entry point. So once I do that, you will see that there is going to be an app being launched over here, and it is running on the port number 3000. So that is the app. So you can do some funny stuff here. Let's say what you need to complete, recording this video, obviously. And once you are done with this, you can delete it. Okay, so that's the active completed and stuff. All right, that's the simple application that I have got. It's like a one-page application, and we are going to run this particular application this time. So it is running locally over here, but this time we are going to deploy this application inside a container, and we'll see how it actually works using a Dockerfile. So for doing that, let's open the Visual Studio Code, like pretty much exactly what we did in our earlier video. And over here, what I'm going to do is we need to add a new file called as a Dockerfile. So this is the first time we are doing it. So I'm just going to do a Dockerfile, and you can see that the IntelliSense of the Visual Studio Code shows a Docker image there, which is cool. And now I'm just going to start adding the code over here. I mean, it's going to be very, very super simple. So I'm going to say from, and you can see that once I type F, it automatically brings some IntelliSense over here. The reason why it brings this IntelliSense is because I have installed a extension over here, which is nothing but the Docker extension. So you can go to the extensions, and if you search for Docker, then this is the extension which I was talking about. I have already installed this Docker extension from Microsoft. That's very, very super simple extension, which helps you a lot while writing the Docker file. All right, so I'm just going to use the from and then the base image, and I'm going to type node. And once I do a node, you can see that it brings me up all the different images, like official images available for us to run this particular application. So for example, in this case, I'm going to run the 12.18.1, something like that. So that's the base image that I need. And I also need the work directory, and the path of the work directory is nothing but the /app. So this is going to be on that container. And once I have this, I'm then going to copy all the packages and yarn.log file and everything which I really require. So basically, I'm going to say package.json. I need that. And I also need the yarn.log file. And I also need exactly all the files which is sitting on that particular directory. That's going to be the copy. And once I have this, I'm going to do a yarn install, and you can see that the IntelliSense of the GitHub Copilot is helping me to do that, which is cool. And once I have this, I'm then going to do a copy of dot. That is awesome. And then I'm going to expose a port number, which is going to be of port number 3000 over here. And finally, I'm going to put an entry point of yarn, and you can see that it brings me up that as well, which is cool. I'm going to say React. That's it. So this is the only thing which I need to do over here. And you know what? I generated this particular this command or the comment using the GitHub's code space itself. So once I do this hash, and you can see that it's going to show me like base image, and then if I type hash, then it automatically tells that what is the next command it's going to be. I'm going to say working, and you see that it brings me up over here like working directory. And then if I'm going to say like copy, so copy all the files from the current directory to the working directory. So all these are automatically coming for us. And you can see that it also add the node modules folder to the path. So I'm gonna say it's gonna be basically installing the dependencies. So you can see that the Copilot is really helpful to bring me up all those things. So that's how I added the comment in the slide that you saw earlier. Cool. That's additional about this GitHub Copilot, which I have the extension already, which is cool. And once we have all these things, we need to run this particular Docker file. So in order to run this Docker file, all we need to do is, let's go to the terminal once again, and we need to do this Docker. Before even doing that, let's do a Docker images. So you can see that I don't really have any image at the moment relating to the image of the Node.js or something like that. And we are going to be basically using that or creating one. So let's do that. Docker build -t for the tag. And I'm gonna give a name for it, so which is the to do React. And I'm gonna give the context, which is nothing but the current directory from where the Docker file is sitting and what it is gonna be building. So if you have a Docker file which is gonna be sitting in a different folder structure like production Docker file or test Docker file, then you probably can specify the name of the file using the -f like that. Or you can just specify the dot for the Docker file, which is in this name. Yeah. So Docker file knows what to do. Once I hit enter, you can see that it is starting to build all the required dependencies and stuff. It is trying to pull the latest image from the hub.docker.com. You can see over here, the node image that we just specified, and it is pulling that and it is trying to build everything for us. And you can see that it's running the work directory /app, copy the files, run the yarn install. So each and every command that we gave over here is running step by step on this particular Docker build command, which is reading the Docker file, and it is performing all the necessary commands or the action for that particular command over here. And once it's all done, it's gonna have a image for us. So let's just wait for this to happen. And it's done. So now if I just do a Docker images, you will see that I have an image of to do React, which is of whooping size of 1.36 gig. Well, that's different story altogether. The reason why it's like 1.36 gig is because it has the whole React, the Node.js library layer. At the same time, it has the node underscore module, everything sitting inside that, and that's the reason it is bigger, and that's why we have the concept of what is called as multi-stage build. Well, I'm going to talk about those things later in this course, but as of now, you can see that this is the file being, this is the image being created. And now if I just wanted to run this particular image, then I need to do, or maybe I can also do this Docker inspect of this to do React like that. You can see that it shows me all the details of this particular image that we have created. Like it has a to do React is the name, and that is the tag, like latest tag. And if you come all the way down over here, there is no author I have specified, then it's just leaving them all. And you can see the work directory is currently /app that we gave on this particular command over here. And also the architecture is ARM64 because I'm running the Apple M1. So it automatically takes the ARM64 for me, which is quite cool and intelligent. And it's all good right now. All right, so let's try to run this particular Docker image that we have created. So let me clear the screen. So I'm just going to do Docker run of probably, I'm going to say -rmi for removing the, or -rm for removing that particular container once it is done. And then I'm going to do an IT for interactive and -p for the port. And we know that the internal port which is being exposed is currently 3000, and I need to access this application probably on the 8000. So I'm going to say 8000, and 3000 is the port, internal port, which I'm going to be accessing. I'm not going to do any volume mapping this time. So whatever change that I make in my local machine is not going to be affected on the container that happened in our last video while we discussed about the Docker run. And then I'm going to do this to do React. I think this is the image name, right? Once I hit enter now, you can see that the application is starting to run. and it has started it. And the reason why it is showing us all the command is because we're running in the interactive mode right now. And let's go to the application over here, and I'm gonna go localhost colon not 3000 8000, which we have exposed. And once I hit enter, you can see that I could able to access it. That is awesome. And if you really wanted to see what's really happening, let me just bring up another tab over here. Let's do it clear. So if I just show you the Docker ps-a, you will see that we have a container up and running, which is this container. So if I just copy this particular container over here, and if I just do a Docker logs of that particular container, you will see that this is the exact command or the logs that is shown over here. So basically this is the container which is up and running. We can also see this in the Docker desktop if you have already installed within your Mac or Windows operating system, and you will see that it comes over here, which is running this particular application, which is cool. So now our application is currently being up and running on this particular Docker container. So let me just stop this. And once I stop that, you will see that if I just do a Docker ps-a, the container is gone. The reason why it's gone is because we have used the command rm, like --rm. That's why the container is gone, which is cool. So now let's get back to our VS Code. And I will show you a nice little trick that you can also do instead of writing this Docker file itself. So probably if you don't really want to write a Docker file altogether by yourself, you can move it to the trash like I'm doing it now. And you can just do, because you have installed this Docker extension, you can do Windows Shift P or Command Shift P if you're using Mac. And then you can use this Docker add Dockerfiles to the workspace, and you can select the application, which is NodeJS in our case. If you're using ASP.NET Core, which we'll be doing in our next video, you can choose that as well. And then you can choose the package.json file, which is going to have all the package which is available on that particular package.json file. And you can see that it also asks me which port that you want to expose, which is 3000, which is cool. And do you want to include all the optional compose file, which is no. And once I do that, you will see that there is going to be a Docker file automatically added for us, which is quite interesting. And this is what I was talking about before. I mean, this is really, really cool to see that we have things coming up automatically over here. And extra, it has some environment like node environment is called to production. And there is the working directory, a bit different than the /app that we just saw. And you can see that it shows run npm install production silent node modules, blah, 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 and all those things. And it says npm start. Well, it's not npm because we're using yarn. I mean, you can do that, but let's change this to a yarn react. And instead of this particular image, I'm going to use the 12.18.0 probably Alpine, which is all good. And once I have this, I can Control S, and I can also run this particular Docker file by just clicking it, right clicking it, and then you can see there is an option called as build image. So using this build image command, we can also build an image pretty much like how we just did from our command line. And you can see that it is currently doing a build operation for us. So this is another nice little trick that we could do to actually build an image and even run that particular Docker files from the Visual Studio Code itself, instead of you remembering many of these command lines, which is awesome. And you can see that once it is done, you can press any key to quit, and you can go back to the Docker over here, and you can see that it has created the most to do, which is the new image which has been created. I can just probably Windows Shift P, Docker, run the image interactively, and it asks me which image that I need to run, which is going to be the most to do React. I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to hit enter. And once I do that, you will see that it has to execute it, but for some reason it is not. The reason being the command has to be not like production, something like that. But don't worry about all these things, why it is not running. You can modify that and you could run that. But yes, this is how we could able to use Visual Studio Code to run the command as well, which is cool. So this is how we could make use of Visual Studio Code as well for us to do these things. And this is exactly doing the command that we did over here. I mean, those are very super simple. You could use Visual Studio Code's plugin as well if you wanted to do it. That's it, guys. Once again, thank you very much for watching this video, and you guys have a great day. Catch you in the next one.